He thought he was dreaming when he saw Michael sitting there, watching him in the dark. But the sting of reality came fast. This wasn't a dream. And nothing about Michael's gaze was casual. Daniel Monroe was 28, one of the youngest attorneys at his firm to handle federal cases. He had built his life around rules, deadlines, and walls so high no one ever climbed over. His parents back in Chicago thought they'd raised the perfect son, a man too focused on his career to be distracted by romance. What they didn't know, what Daniel had buried for years, was the storm that lived inside him every time Michael Reed walked into a room. Michael was his colleague, his rival at times, the man who turned law firm cafeterias into silent battles of glances and subtle smirks. He was confident in ways Daniel could never bring himself to be broad-shouldered, with a reckless laugh that spilled through hallways. A man whose presence forced people to orbit him. And for 2 years, Daniel had trained himself not to stare too long, not to listen too closely, not to feel too much. Yet here Michael was, sitting beside his bed, in Daniel's apartment, at 1 a.m. Jesus Christ, Michael. Daniel's voice cracked, his throat dry. He sat up, sheets pooling at his waist. What the hell are you doing here? Michael didn't flinch. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, eyes never leaving Daniel's. There was no mockery in them tonight. Just, wait. You weren't answering your phone, Michael said, his tone low, almost hoarse. After today. Look, I just had to make sure you were okay. Daniel blinked, memory crashing back in waves. The case. The humiliating fallout in court. The way his carefully constructed argument had collapsed under a single brutal objection. One he hadn't seen coming. He had walked out of that courtroom with his dignity in tatters, his hands shaking so hard he'd dropped his notes on the courthouse steps. He remembered ignoring Michael's calls, ignoring everyone's calls, just wanting the world to leave him alone. But Michael hadn't left him alone. Daniel swallowed hard, his heart beating too fast, too loud in the small room. You broke into my apartment. I still had the spare key from when you asked me to water your plants last year. Michael replied simply. You never asked for it back. That was true. He had never asked. And maybe, deep down, he had liked the idea of Michael holding that key. Silence stretched. The city outside pulsed with life-distance sirens, the low hum of traffic. But in that bedroom, everything shrank to just the two of them. Two men balanced on the razor edge of something unspoken. You can't just sit here watching me sleep, Daniel muttered, trying to sound annoyed but failing. His voice softened against his will. It's creepy. Michael's lips twitched into the faintest smile. Creepy would be leaving you alone tonight. The words hit harder than Daniel wanted them to. His chest tightened, not with anger, but with something warmer, something he didn't want to name. He turned away, pretending to reach for the glass of water on his nightstand. His fingers shook against the rim. For years, he had convinced himself he didn't feel this, that his quickened pulse whenever Michael brushed past him in the hallway, that the heat in his chest whenever Michael defended him in front of senior partners, none of it meant anything. They were colleagues, rivals, friends at best. But now Michael was here, close enough that Daniel could see the lines of exhaustion under his eyes, the way his hand flexed as if he wanted to reach out but didn't dare. And Daniel knew. He knew this wasn't just friendship anymore. And maybe it never had been. Michael finally leaned back, running a hand through his hair, breaking the tension with a quiet sigh. "You scare the hell out of me. You know that." Daniel froze. His eyes snapped back to him. "What are you talking about?" "You," Michael said simply. "The way you shut people out. The way you act like nothing ever touches you. But then, every once in a while, I see through it. I see you in there." And that he paused, his voice faltering for the first time. That's the part one can't walk away from. The confession hung in the air, raw and dangerous. Daniel's chest ached with it. He wanted to deny it, laugh it off, change the subject. But his body betrayed him, leaned forward without meaning to, pulled by something stronger than reason. Their knees brushed. Daniel didn't move away. Neither did Michael. And in that fragile, terrifying second, Daniel realized he was no longer in control of this story. Daniel didn't sleep that night, even after Michael had left. His chair scraped softly against the floor and the door clicked shut behind him. The weight of his presence lingered. Daniel lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, trying to rewrite reality in his mind. But reality refused to bend. For the next 2 weeks, Daniel avoided Michael. He buried himself in work, came in early, stayed late, dodged the firm's cafeteria like it was a battlefield. He knew Michael noticed. There was no way he couldn't, but Michael didn't confront him. Not immediately. Instead, he gave Daniel space, which only made the silence between them heavier. It all came to a head on a rainy Thursday evening. The firm's office was nearly empty. Everyone long gone except the two of them. Daniel sat hunched over stacks of depositions, glasses sliding down the bridge of his nose. His tie was loosened, his exhaustion obvious. The elevator dinged. Footsteps echoed. Then Michael's voice, quiet but firm, "We need to talk." Daniel stiffened. He didn't look up. "I'm busy." "Bullshit." Michael closed the distance, stopping right in front of Daniel's desk. "You've been busy for 2 weeks. You're not busy, no, you're hiding." Daniel's jaw tightened. He forced himself to shuffle a page, as if that might shield him. "You can't just walk in here and what? Remind you that I care." Michael cut in sharply. His voice cracked on the last word. "You think I don't see it? You think I don't know how hard you're fighting just to pretend none of this matters?" Daniel slammed his pen down, finally lifting his gaze. His chest burned, a knot of anger and fear twisting so tight it felt like it might choke him. "Because it shouldn't matter. Michael, you're my colleague. We work in a firm that would eat us alive if they even suspected something. Do you understand that?" Michael leaned forward, bracing his hands on the desk, their faces inches apart. His eyes were fierce, storm-dark. "I understand risk. I understand fear. But don't you dare tell me what I feel doesn't matter." The words struck something deep, something Daniel had spent years building walls against. His throat tightened. He wanted to say yes, to give in, to let himself fall. But all that came out was a whisper. "You don't know what you're asking me for." Michael's voice softened. "Then tell me." Tell me what it is that terrifies you more, loving me, or being seen loving me. Daniel's silence was his answer. His heart hammered. He wanted to kiss him. Wanted it so badly his whole body ached with it. But fear still clung to him like chains. Michael pushed off the desk, straightening. The anger drained from his face, replaced with something far more painful: disappointment. He shook his head slowly, as if Daniel had just sentenced them both. Fine, Michael said. His voice was low. Final. I'm not going to beg you to feel what you already do. When you're ready, you know where to find me. And then he left. The weeks after were hell. Daniel functioned on autopilot. He won cases, smiled in front of partners, filed motions, drafted contracts. But at night, the silence of his apartment pressed in until he couldn't breathe. He thought of Michael constantly, his laugh echoing in court, his hand brushing against his shoulder when passing in the hall. The way he had looked that night in his bedroom, equal parts vulnerable and unshakable. Daniel told himself he was protecting them both, that he was keeping their careers intact, keeping their reputations safe. But deep down he knew the truth: he was just afraid. It was his mother's voice that broke the cycle. She called late one evening, her tone cheerful as always. Honey, you sound tired. Are you working yourself into the ground again? Daniel smiled faintly, leaning against his kitchen counter. Something like that. Daniel, listen to me, she said softly, her warmth cutting through the static. You don't get a medal for loneliness. At the end of the day, your work won't hold your hand. It won't sit beside your bed when you can't sleep. People will. If you're lucky, the right person will. Don't let fear make you miss that. He froze. The words hit him harder than any closing argument he'd ever given. His mother had no idea what she was really saying. Not the whole story. But somehow, she had cut straight to the heart of it. That night, Daniel didn't sleep again. But this time, he knew why. Took him 3 more days. 3 days of pacing his apartment, rehearsing words, tearing them apart, starting again. Until finally, on a crisp Saturday morning, he walked to Michael's building in Brooklyn. His palms were sweaty, his stomach twisted, but his resolve was steady. He knocked. The door opened. Michael stood there in sweatpants and a plain t-shirt, hair messy, a coffee mug in his hand. He blinked in surprise, then narrowed his eyes. Daniel. His tone was guarded, flat. What are you doing here? Daniel's throat was dry. Every part of him screamed to retreat, to run. But he stayed. He forced himself to meet Michael's gaze, to hold it. I was wrong, Daniel said quietly. His voice trembled, but he pushed through. I've been wrong about a lot of things. About pretending I don't feel what I feel. About thinking I could bury it, hide it. But I can't. Not anymore. Michael's jaw tensed. His fingers tightened around the mug. You don't get to show up here and say that like it's simple. You shut me out. Daniel. You made me feel like I was. He broke off, his voice cracking. Like I was nothing. Daniel stepped closer, his chest aching. You're not nothing. You've never been nothing to me. You're. His breath caught, raw and desperate, You're the one person I can't stop thinking about. The one person who terrifies me because of how much I want you. And I'm sorry it took me this long to admit it. I'm sorry I hurt you. But if there's any part of you that still wants me. His voice broke. He swallowed hard. I'm here. I want to try. With you. Silence. The longest silence of Daniel's life. Then Michael set the mug down on the table by the door with a shaky hand. He stared at Daniel for a long moment, his expression unreadable. And finally, he whispered, "You're an idiot." Before Daniel could respond, Michael grabbed him by the shirt and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was fierce, messy. 2 weeks of pain and longing and fury crashing into one. Daniel stumbled back a step, hands clutching at Michael's shoulders, pulling him closer. His heart felt like it might burst. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid. When they broke apart, breathless, Daniel pressed his forehead against Michael's. His lips curved into the smallest, unsteady smile. Yeah, I'm an idiot. But I'm your idiot. If you'll let me be. Michael let out a shaky laugh, one that melted into something softer. He cupped Daniel's face, his thumb brushing against his cheek. You don't get to take that back now. You're stuck with me. Daniel's chest swelled with a relief so profound it was almost painful. He kissed him again, slower this time, tasting not just desperation but hope. Months later, the firm still whispered about Daniel and Michael. There were rumors, sideways glances, quiet speculation over late lunches. But none of it mattered anymore. Because when the day ended, when the suits and ties were stripped away, they went home together. Sometimes they fought over cases, over stress, over Daniel's stubbornness or Michael's recklessness. But always, they found their way back. And sometimes, when Daniel woke in the middle of the night, heart racing from an old fear, he would roll over and see Michael lying beside him. Michael would murmur something half asleep, an arm pulling Daniel close, grounding him, and Daniel would think back to that first night, to the moment everything began. The night he woke to find Michael sitting at his bedside. The night he stopped running from himself. The night he realized love was worth the risk. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.